about the culture of learned helplessness in philanthropy, particularly when it comes to the notions of diversifying staff and power dynamics with donors. So, one of the things that I try to teach my senior leaders is exercise the agency that you already have. Stop
Ooh,
asking
love
for the
that.
agency. You already have a lot of agency. I should back up too, and just because we're talking about diversity and how I set the table, what those terms mean, because we all have our own DEI, DEIB, EISJ, LMNOP, whatever. The way I define those words, at least in the context of New York City and at the new school, and it's going to be different at every organization, but diversity is a fact. It is. We don't really even need to talk about that as a concept. What I'm more interested in is equity and inclusion. So equity is a choice, inclusion is an action. And then belonging, the word that we kind of get hung up on, which is really warm and fuzzy, is the word I think people like to run to because it sounds nice. But I'm not really interested in that because you don't get to claim that. That's just your teams, your culture will tell you if there's belonging, because that's the result of the choices and actions you make regarding equity inclusion. So in terms of the learned helplessness in the form of diversifying staff, as I mentioned earlier, 90% of our field is white. And so how many of us have heard, oh gosh, it's really hard, or but we just have to keep recommitting ourselves, or how many written resolutions have we read about this? How many hyperlinks to how to be an anti-racist have we all, been pushed through in the last 4 years? That's not it. That's not actually diversifying staff. Diversifying staff is actually not very complicated. It is hard because it's a systemic issue, but it's not actually very hard. It is about putting people of color in leadership, and then people follow because they see that you're living your values and you're not just talking about them. And then to your question earlier about burnout and remote work, I think one of the great tools we have now is that flexibility, right? Not asking communities of color to live in communities where they're not safe, where they're not perceived to be safe. So that's it. That's how you diversify your staff, because there's hundreds of us. And we also happen to be qualified. So that is, how about that, right? So the notion that there's no pipeline, all that kind of stuff is just, it's not true. The other